in a ballet recital. Okay, so I was very, very excited about this ballet recital, and I had a beautiful costumes, and that was the highlight of my life. Well, I knew nothing about politics or sheltered, only a little girl. I played in the backyard with other kids. Many were not Jewish, but I was fluent in Polish, barely spoke Yiddish, although I grew up in a Jewish home. But much like here in America, you speak English. Not everyone speaks Yiddish. So I would play in the backyard with Polish and not Polish kids. Well, the day of the recital came about, and I am just so excited. And the day of the recital is the day that the Russian army invaded. Well, life changed overnight. My biological father was drafted to the Russian army. My ballet recital was canceled. And overnight, my life changed completely. The day after or so, being a young kid, I went out to the backyard to play with my friends, who some were not Jewish, but I spoke like them, I looked like them, blonde, blue-eyed. And all of a sudden, they were pointing at me like, like I'm some sort of a loose dog. They didn't want me to be part of them. And being pointed at meant that I was an outcast. Well, being an outcast, it meant that I was pointed out to the I would call it like you call the ASPCA today, to collect unruly dogs. And my friends pointed at me. My mom was inside crying and mourning my father's being drafted. And I had no choice but being dragged by I think he must have been a Polish capo, and dragged me to the front of the house from the backyard and tried to push me up on a truck that had other kids on that truck, Jewish kids, behind a chain. Some were vomiting, most were hysterical crying. And as I'm being pushed up onto the ladder, onto the truck, I held on to the leg of the guy that was, manning that truck. And I held on to his pants and his leg and asked him in Polish, if he had children of his own, how would you feel if your child was thrown onto this truck? I guess I must have, touched a sensitive note in his heart. And he grabbed me by my long blonde braids and threw me off the truck. And he said, if you want to live, then do not return to this home, to this your house, because you will be pointed at again. You keep running in the streets until nightfall. I did as I was told. I didn't stop to reason. And by the time I returned in the evening to be with my mother, she was already mourning my death. No one came back from these trucks, but I did. Obviously, I never went out to play with my so-called friends again. I was now locked in the house, listening to my mother and my other relatives in the house about how our life has changed drastically, and all of our Polish neighbors now became our enemies. No one wanted to help us or look at us or have anything to do with us. It wasn't much longer that we were forced by the Germans to take our few belongings, leave behind our home and all that we treasured, and move on to the ghetto. What did I know? I just cooperated because I am going to be okay. So it was an uncle, an aunt, a brother of my mother's, 2 cousins older than I. I think the male cousin must have been like a teenager, and his sister may have been like, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, but I was 7, and they looked out for me. Well, we came to the ghetto, and it was something that I couldn't even, in my wildest dreams, imagine. People in the streets struggling to stay up, but there is sorrow and crying and death all around me, and yet loudspeakers around the walls of the ghetto and loud march music is playing. In my home, my parents loved dancing and loved music. But this in the ghetto, what I saw was people in the most tortured conditions. How could there be music? And then a bit after, whether it was a week or days, but I stayed on in the ghetto. And then I would see people in a circle with shaven heads and the Star of David scratched out on their foreheads. And they are dancing in a circle to the march music. How could that be? I couldn't understand it. But my family, my aunt, my uncle, and my mom tried to soothe me as much as they could because I was the youngest. And it wasn't much long afterwards that my mother, my beautiful, young, very attractive, strong, and healthy mother was forced against her will to leave the ghetto and be taken to a forced labor camp outside of the ghetto, somewhere, I guess, I don't know, the suburbs of town or whatever the location was. Did I want my mother to leave? Of course not. But the camp that mother went to, I was told, was not a killing camp, but a forced labor camp. And a very popular one, actually. It is now at Yad Vashem, they have it. That was in Lvov or Lviv now. So mom worked there. Her job was loading and unloading wagons of coal. And periodically, never knowing when, but mom and other inmates would be brought into the ghetto to visit family members, but never knowing from when they left and they returned that they would find their family alive again. But I was with my family. They tried very much to coddle me and keep me as comfortable as I could. And I was very obedient. My dad loved me, but was very strict. And I was a very good little girl. And I followed rules and I obeyed. But often in these times in the ghetto, the Germans would go on like killing sprees or gathering people who were capable of working and strong enough, take them out of the ghetto to go to work. And those that didn't cooperate or were available, well, then they were killed. But being Jewish and being smart as we are, Jewish people would find places to hide when these, when these sort of raids would go on. Somehow through word of mouth, they would find out, and people would submit or find places to hide, such as if you lived somewhere where you had a basement and you could dig beneath the basement, then you would be in the cellar. In order to let people in the cellar, you had to give them something of value to let these people in. Meaning, if you had extra food, you would give that. Perhaps jewelry that you had sewed into your, into your clothing. Perhaps jewelry, as I said, that was hidden, extra food. But I didn't know any of this. My uncle and aunt and cousins included me. Mom wasn't there for me to complain, but they often took me. Sometimes it wasn't a cellar. Sometimes it was an attic of some sort of an old castle or a church. Sometimes it was even hanging on to the sides of a sewer, where the Germans, if you could hide and hang on to the side, the handles inside the sewer, once the Germans passed, you would be free. So my family, my uncle and aunt would take me along with them. And whatever they gave in payment, I wasn't aware of. Sometimes I was allowed in to go into hiding with them, and sometimes not. And the reason that they wouldn't sometimes allow me in was because of my young age. If this was going to be a raid that would last, say, a day and a night and another day, where there is no light, where there is no food, where there is no water and no bathroom, children would cry. Well, I was a young child, and the cry of a child like myself or another child would give everyone away. So one of the times that my family went into hiding and constantly, praising me for being such a good girl, and whatever they gave in payment to be hidden, I do not know about, but they brought me to that place, and the people I'm not sure that it was a woman or a man or a couple, they refused to permit me to go in. They would allow my uncle and aunt and cousins, but not myself because of my young age. Well, my aunt had to make a decision. She bent down and hugged me, and she said, "Celia, you are such a good girl, and this will probably be over in the morning. Here is a blanket, cover your blonde hair, and just go hide in that nearby house that is all, like bombed out, so it's only like ruins. It'll probably be over in the morning, and you'll sleep through the night, and we will be together." Of course, I obeyed. I understood that the way to live, and I didn't reason. I don't think I had yet reached the age of reason. Therefore, I obeyed in order to live. My aunt gave me the blanket. It was turning dusk. I covered myself, and I thought I fell asleep. And during the night, I had dreams. And the dreams, there were footsteps, like, loud footsteps. I couldn't understand why was I dreaming of footsteps? But the footsteps came closer. And as they came closer, I realized that, oh, I lost the picture of everyone. What is this? Oh, sugar. Okay. So,
we can still see you.
Okay, now I'm back. I see you. Okay, see you guys again. Anyway, as the footsteps came closer, a voice rang out. And then I realized that it's not a dream. And as the footsteps came closer, where I was hiding in the ruins, a voice rang out. And the voice was my aunt. And she said, Celia, if you're here, because she wasn't sure where I was, if you're here and if you can hear me, we won't see you anymore. Which means that the place where my family were hiding and all the other people there were discovered, they were led to their death. I was not allowed in, and I'm alive and speaking to you about it. So now I'm alone. I can't contact my mom, but I'm in the ghetto, and everyone around me is as confused and as sick and frightened and terrorized, and no one is paying attention to me. But I want to live. So being a little girl, loved dolls. Well, I had no toys, I had no dolls, I had nowhere to sleep. So I would go around in the different places where people, stayed with children, like older children and babies. And I started playing with the babies. After all, a little girl loves dolls. So I played with the babies. And when the parents would have to go into hiding, obviously they could not take their babies. No one would allow babies into a hiding place because, after all, babies cry. So the parents hoped that the Germans, as they were passing looking for hidden Jews, if the baby doesn't cry, then, they'll ignore the baby. And if the parents come back, they'll hopefully find the baby alive. And indeed, if the baby didn't cry and the Germans were looking for hidden Jews, then they ignored it. But the parents would leave behind a bottle, a little pacifier, a toy, or even a little, jar with sugared water with a little cotton pad. And if a baby cried and I'm entertaining them and putting a little water that's sweet on their lips, the baby doesn't cry. Well, if the baby doesn't cry, then the Germans who are passing looking for hidden Jews ignore the baby. If the parents survive and they come back and now find their baby alive, now they're paying attention to Celia. And in gratefulness, they share a little of their food rations with me. When they see that I am covered with lice, they cut my hair and they pour kerosene in a like in a metal container and pour it over my head to kill the lice. This went on. I got weak and sick, but no one found me. At times, yes, people did and try to, console me or keep me calm, but mostly not. I don't know how much time there was, whether it was another week or 2 weeks or longer, I do not remember. But Mom and the other inmates from the camp that Mom worked at were brought in for the day to the ghetto, and never knowing whether they would or not find family members alive. When she asked about, did anyone see my family, they said, no, we haven't seen them, therefore they are probably dead. So mom went back to camp for that week, thinking that everybody, including her daughter, is no longer alive. The following week or 10 days, as I said, I do not know that, I don't remember how often she came back. And it was only for the day. Somehow, word got to her that there's this little girl that's watching babies. And by word of mouth, she found me. And when she found me, she brought me to a doctor inside the ghetto. The doctor gave me some medicine, and there were days where I stayed in a bathroom and no one found me because I was too sick to come out, but no one looked. But I survived, and mom came back again. With the medicine, I got better. And mom said that she has to look and find a place that possibly will be able to get me, sneak out of the ghetto and bring me to them. I didn't give it much thought. As I said, I was too young to reason. I'm gonna live and I'm gonna do everything that I can to live. I compare it today, like if you see a cockroach or an ant crawling on the floor, right? You step on it, right? You lift your foot, you think you got it, right? But it still keeps running. True? It runs. You thought you got it, but the ant still runs, or whatever little animal you're stepping on. Time went by, mom came back, and she said, if you want to live, then let's come up with the following plan. I have found a couple. They know you. You may not remember them, but they will keep you comfortable and alive. I didn't ask for other details. She told me to cover myself with the blanket and at nightfall to go sneak out from underneath the walls of the ghetto. And there is some sort of a wooded area nearby or a park, and she will meet me there. I'm speeding things up because time is flying. Anyway, I tried that, and maybe it was midnight or later. I had no one to report to, obviously. And I covered myself with the blankets, sneaked my head out just underneath the wall of the ghetto. And I saw lights and soldiers with arms, with, guns and, or whatever arms they had pointed. And I chickened out, couldn't do it. I was too afraid. The next time mom came back, she was particularly charming and very beautiful, and she must have made friends with some of the guards of the camp where mom worked at. And they spoke Polish, and obviously mom did. And she got word through them that they heard that the ghetto is going to be exterminated. So if you want your child to live, she can't stay there much longer. So mom came back and told me of this. And she said, if you can't do it, sneaking out from under the wall, let's try tonight at dusk, when the other inmates and I are leaving, and they were wearing uniforms, like dark striped uniforms. When you're small, cover yourself with that blanket that I gave you. Try to sneak in between all the inmates walking out, and maybe you won't be noticed and you'll make it outside of the gates of the ghetto. I obeyed, as I always did, and I did sneak out. And I came out of the gates of the ghetto. I remember that it was sometime in March, and the moon was out, and mom warned me that once I'm out of the ghetto, if it's a moonlit night, then I am to cover my nose because although I'm blonde and blue-eyed, my long nose will give me away as a Jewess. And I can't be in a park where people might recognize me, even though it was already dark. So I did as I was told. I sat on a bench and I thought maybe there are going to be bears or wolves coming at me, but I recognized that it was a park that Dad used to bring me to on Sunday for picnics, where there was a merry-go-round. It wasn't, nothing was on at the time, but it became familiar. Somehow during the night, and I don't remember by what means, Mom came during the night, and I don't remember by what vehicle or how we got to the suburbs of town, to the family who agreed to hide me. I didn't know that they were going to hide me or be with them. It didn't matter. All that mattered is that I want to live. We got to the suburbs of town. Mom and I hugged. Neither one of us cried, but we both knew that we would never see each other again. And there, in the driveway of a sort of a farmhouse, on the lower level, there stands this middle-aged or young blonde woman, a gentleman behind her, and a couple, an older couple behind them. Mom left, and this woman who stood with the door open embraced me, and I smelled her cleanliness, and they took me into their house, and they cleaned me up, and they took care of my wounds and the lice, and assigned me a bed, not a bed, but inside a closet in the basement on the floor, where they put down a pillow and blankets, and took care of all these skin diseases that I had, but gave me the following restrictions. They were going to take care of me, they said, but I was never allowed to wear shoes in the house. I was never allowed to be around. I had to run down to that closet, that bed that was the floor, which was my bed, if the doorbell rang. I was never to open the curtains that the windows were covered with. This family was a gentleman and a lady who owned this house, and they were the parents of the couple who used to be customers of my dad. My dad was a sheet metal worker, but someone of like an artist in metals. And on Sundays, they would come and look at my father's, my father's work, and they met me there. They had no children, and Mom told them that her husband, my father, was gone. She probably won't live. If they want to take the chance of their life, if they can save me, then I would be their child. I came to them without being able to think or speak, covered with all kinds of skin diseases, which they caught, and they were suspicious. Why, you were near Jews? How else do you get that disease if you had to be near Jews? They went to the doctor, they got medicine, they healed me and themselves. I had a set of grandparents and loving parents, and slowly I became their daughter. This is Mommy and Dad. My dad was a college professor, I don't remember of what. I had grandparents, and they had a barn in the backyard, where they had a cow and a goat and chickens for their own use. and they would go down and bring up warm milk and the eggs and let me taste it and touch it, and promise that after the war, I will be able to see and touch the animals and see the chicken lay eggs. And slowly I got better. I loved them. They became mommy and daddy, and I had grandparents, and they told me my Polish name, which was Celia, and my grandmother told me that I am so good that God will love me, and they will take me to church, and I will be formally baptized or christened and be their daughter. And that was fine with me. I had yet still not reached the age of reason. I knew never to go near a window. They provided whatever entertainment they could. I couldn't yet read or write, but my father would come at night. I would warm his slippers. He would read books to me, and I heard children playing outside. But I was told that when the war is over, I will be part of that group. This went on for about close to a year, and I still slept in the basement. I'm sorry, I'm rushing through now because I see it's late and I have much more to tell you. So one morning, as I came up from sleeping downstairs, shuffled up in my stocking feet, the windows of in the living room, which were across from other houses, the curtains were open. They were never open before. What's going on? My grandmother heard me shuffle in. She ran quickly to cover my eyes like that, but she didn't do it fast enough, because what I saw were 4 people, 2 adults and 2 children, hung by their necks outside on the opposite house across from the window. Obviously, that was another Polish family who were hiding, 2 Jewish children, probably a brother and sister. They were discovered, and to show others what the penalty was for hiding Jewish kids, they hung them. So my family had a sit down, and my brilliant father decided that he was going to search on an alternative where to hide me, because it was no longer safe to be with them, because they would be constantly searching the surrounding houses. A day or 2 went by. He came back and said, and obviously my grandparents and my mother, my Polish mother, everyone was hysterical. They worried about me. They wanted and they loved me, and I loved them. But my goal was to live. Therefore, I will do anything I need to live. His thought was that I would be brought by my Polish mother to an orphanage that was at that time bringing Jewish orphans from the Holocaust, to what was then Palestine. This we're looking at must have been like early 44 or maybe late 43. I do not remember dates. They packed my little belongings, very tearful goodbyes, but I need to live. Therefore, I'm going to follow all directions. In the morning, they even let me taste the warm milk that they brought up, and they said they're sorry that I can't, get to experience, to meet the animals like they promised. But my mother, my Polish mother, took me out of the house after we all cried and said goodbye, and is taking me out to go to the orphanage. But we're going out from the back of the house. So why am I going to the back? Oh, probably I'm thinking so that I can finally see the animals, which I have been wanting to see for the time I was there, which was probably maybe a year and a half or less. As I said, I don't remember the length of time. So she brings me down to the barn. And before I get to see the animals, she sits me down on the staircase and faces me and in whispers says to me the following: Scylla, I love you so much, and you're such a good, smart girl. I'm afraid that you may not make it to that destination in Palestine safely. So how would you feel if I hid you in the barn here where you are, and I will only bring you food when it is my turn to feed the animals, which is once every third day, because my grandfather was no longer physically able to do that. So it was my mother, my Polish mother, father, and the grandmother. Oh, and by the way, Scylla, you're going to have a friend. Really? I'm so excited. I'm going to have a friend finally. I didn't stop to think how difficult it's going to be being in a barn. I'm going to have a friend. I agreed. She put her, she took a pitchfork, separated the hay, and all the way up on top of the barn, like, top towards the ceiling. I'm expecting to see a little girl, and there's this skeletal, unkept woman who was whispering names of endearment that sound familiar, but I don't know who they are. I'm not recognizing all those names. And she tries, but all in whispers. I don't know this woman. And then she says, Scylla, don't you remember the ballet recital? So you now tell me, my beautiful young audience, who was this friend? Can you guess? Can you hear me?
Yes. If you know the answer, you can unmute yourself.
Was it your mother?
So it was my biological mother, yes.
Wow.
My mother was told by the guards, whom she gained favors, that her camp was going to be exterminated. After loading up the wagons of coal, which was her job, she laid herself down in the tracks and escaped from the camp. And having nowhere to go, she went to the same woman to whom a year or so earlier she brought me, and said to her, I'm not coming here to claim my child back. I'm not coming here to put your wonderful family in danger, but could you find anywhere around your property or outside of your property, anywhere where I can just die of natural causes, not to be hurt, dismembered, raped, whatever. Well, this Polish angel of a woman hid my mom in the barn while I was upstairs thriving for about 9 months. She only brought mother food when it was her turn to feed the animals, and it had to look like animal food because the family would be suspicious. So the 3 members of the family didn't know about it. So no wonder that mom changed from the beautiful woman she was to someone unrecognizable. And the only thing that made me realize it was my mom is when I went back to that ballet recital, which is when the war started for me. We were reunited in the barn. Now one of us could sleep while the other one would make a noise that the animals wouldn't come at us, the rats. One of us was able to push the other out of the way when Germans came with pitchforks looking for hidden Jews. In the beginning, I was still capable and strong enough to sneak down at night and get some of the food that was there soaking for the animals. But she came every third day with 3 pails, one with water, one with food for the animals, like dry bread soaking in, and one empty pail, obviously, for our body use. She came every third day, brought us up to date of how the war was progressing. And for about a year and a half, we were there. By the time we were told that the war is over and we were liberated, and all that in whispers, because mind you, her family upstairs did not know that we are there. Once a bomb or part of a bomb hit her house, but not where her family was sleeping. And she said, God is rewarding them with life because she is saving 2 innocent lives. I have to speed this up. We were liberated. I don't know by what means we got back to the house that was ours pre-war. We were liberated by the Russians. They set up camp in the house that was ours. They taught us how to speak in normal tones, how to chew regular food. They nursed us back to health. And a few months after that, the super of the house that was still the same, who was there pre-war, brought a letter addressed to my mom and I. He couldn't read it. He gave it to my mom. She read it, but did not know, he didn't know who signed it, and neither did mom, but she recognized the handwriting. It was a letter from my biological father, who escaped the Russian army and survived in Siberia, in Russia. He was looking for the whereabouts about his wife and daughter, couldn't use his real name, not to be found out. We were reunited in 1945. And when he came off whatever vehicle he came with and stretched out his arms to me, and he was so thrilled to see me, and I, who are you? What do you mean you're my father? And he pulled out a photograph of myself that he had with him, of myself being dressed for that ballet recital, which was the highlight of my life. And obviously we were reunited as an intact family. We left Poland, went on through different displaced persons camps in Germany, and was sponsored by an uncle to come to the United States in August of 1949. I don't know if you can see, but this is the picture of myself dressed for that ballet recital. Can you see it?
Wow, you look beautiful.
Okay, that was, if any of you remember, there was a Shirley Temple who was a popular child actress. That was a costume of like hers. So obviously that was the highlight of my life. Now I recognize that. We came to the United States in 1949, sponsored by an uncle. My uncle told me I'm in a free country. My dad enrolled me in school. And I surprised 1 month short of my 15th birthday in 1950, I was presented with a baby brother, an American. My parents, my mom went into severe postpartum depression. Dad had to work. They weren't too happy about the baby, but here he was. I had a major part in raising him. And now he is about 5.5 years older than my oldest child. I was married in 1954 to someone that my parents knew from the DP camps. I finished high school. I got married. still worked. My husband was in the food business, and that's what made my parents feel that it was, at least I won't be hungry if he doesn't have money, but he's in the grocery business, so I won't be hungry again. I never wanted to speak about my experiences, but my youngest daughter, who was 10 years younger, in 1966, she got involved in building the Museum of Jewish, in the building, plans for the Museum of Jewish Heritage. And in the late 90s, she convinced me that I should tell this story to youngsters. And since then, I have been speaking to schools, at the museum, and a lot of the students have become like grandchildren. Even in this difficult time here in the virus, they call me from New York or students here from Florida because they are taken by the story and maybe by the generosity that whatever nationality or faith or color you are, there are good people like the couple who became my surrogate parents and risked their life to save me. Unfortunately, we started looking after the war, after we came to the United States looking for this couple. However, they were they had a last name had some sort of a German descent, and we were now occupied by Russia. They left Poland, moved on to Great Britain. We never found them, but they are always part of my life, part of my family. And every time there is a wedding or a birth or a bar mitzvah of my beautiful family, we always chose this family who risked their life to save mine. So I'm sorry it's late, but if you have questions, let's go.
Wow.
Am I out of time, guys? Am
No,
I out of
no,
time?
no, you're not out of time. That
Okay.
was, yeah, I'm at a loss of words. So with your permission, we'll open it up for a couple of questions.
Oh, absolutely. I just felt that I was rushing. I don't mean it to be like a written, thing, because I was watching the clock. So
Thank
go on,
you.
please. Of course.
Gabriel, Gabo, do you have a question? You can unmute yourself when you're ready.
Where is Gabriel?
Hi.
Okay. Gabriel, okay, where are you?
Hi. Maybe if I
Okay,
speak, you can see me?
Okay.
You can see me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, first of all, what a tremendous story, and thank you so much for sharing. It's tremendously moving.
I'm very pleased that you find that, important. It's wonderful to know that there are good and bad people in every race and every nationality. So, yes, sir.
I think my question is, I'm curious, after undergoing such hardships, losing a lot of your family. I think you were lucky to have your parents survive, but in any case, you were separated many times as a young girl. You had to live in these horrible conditions. And I think to people I know today, I think, and probably including myself, if we had to live through things like this, we would be, we'd have such emotional scars that I don't know if we'd be able to continue. So I'm just curious, how you were able to kind of move on after having such hard experiences, and if you had any sort of
let me tell you in this way. First of all, I think that I was too young. I hadn't yet developed the ability to reason. So therefore, my goal was only to live, much like I compare it, as I said, stepping on an ant or a cockroach on the floor. Secondly, my husband was working, he wasn't home. My mom was busy raising a child of her own because I was married, he was just 4 years old. And in my life, it was always to fight to live. So my husband spoke Yiddish, and I insisted on speaking English. I used to, like fault him. Paul, we're in America. Why are you speaking Yiddish? He said, because that's our language. No, we're American now. I wanted to put it away, but I couldn't. And even now, on this very difficult time, I need to just tell you this now with this virus, right? So the other night, they were painting the house where I live here in Florida. And in order to paint the house, which they spray, they covered up the windows with plastic, right? Like plastic not to, get paint onto the glass. So I was totally enclosed. Okay, during the day, I watched the TV, I was reading, whatever, being on the phone. That night, I had the worst nightmares. And I couldn't understand what the nightmares were. The nightmares were that I was in that hiding place, in that grave-sized area, because I had no light, no world outside of me. I woke up at like 3:30 in the morning, and I'm drinking coffee saying, where am I? Could this be that I am still there? So it's in me, but it's buried deep. I have been fortunate enough to have lived long enough to see a country like Israel that is now a home for us, to have 3 healthy children, married, 7 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren, all wonderful, caring, good people, and doing good things for society. If I lived in that dark and anger and frustration and disappointment of what I would have wanted to be, but I couldn't, I wouldn't enjoy the fruit of the labor of raising these 3 kids. And it wasn't easy. My husband was never home. I've been telling them the story when they were very young. I spoke to their schools, and I still do. And now, if I'm around much longer, because my oldest great-grandchild is 7, and he is in a yeshiva in whatever, New Rochelle, I think, or, someplace up in the, in the Yonkers area. So I tell this story because I now have in my audience not Jewish kids who listen to this story and they have never heard it. And they tell me, they can raise up their hand and say, you couldn't make this up. But my father, my uncle, they told me it never happened. So it's always there, but I don't live it daily. If I did, I would be wallowing in my anger and disappointment. I never forget it. And here in this terrible time of this pandemic and this virus, I walk in the street, I'm alone, no one looks at me. And if they see me, they avoid me. Doesn't that bring back memories of the past? Right? I'm alone in a house, pretty or not, but I'm alone, surrounded by walls. It brings back all those memories, yes. But then now I have some of the students, whether it be from New York, from the museum, here from Florida, calling to see how I am, offering help. So if I was angry, I would live with myself and the anger. I can't be angry, I have to share and hopefully make it a better world because of this. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? No other questions? So, okay, when you guys come to the museum, I would love to meet you. when we're back and the world is normal again, come to the museum.
We will 100% come. I would love to have you for Shabbos dinner also when all the insanity ends.
Oh, I'm game for that. I'll
You
even
will be
wear
the
my high
guest of
heels.
honor.
Okay,
I will invite myself.
where do most of you live? In Brooklyn?
In Brooklyn.
Where in Brooklyn? Guess where I lived in Brooklyn?
Flatbush?
When we first got married, we lived on Empire Boulevard.
That's
And
very
my-
close to us.
Close.
Yes, that's where I lived, near Crown Street, you know.
Yeah.
Right,
Very
that's
close.
where right. And my husband had a business first in Williamsburg and then in Brooklyn, someplace on Stone Avenue. And my children, we then moved to like Utica and 54th Street. And my children all went to the Yeshiva of Flatbush,
Wow.
all my 3 kids. And
So your neshama is connected to Brooklyn.
oh, yes, Brooklyn all the way. My parents lived in the Bronx. We lived in Brooklyn. And my baby brother traveled on the subway at age 7 to come and be with us in Brooklyn.
Wow.
He was part of my family. So I would very much love to meet all of you. Thank you for having me. I hope my story shows you that there are people of whatever faith or color. There are good people between all of us, and we need to be there for them because they are for us. So thank you
so much, Celia, on behalf
course.
of all of us and our extended communities here in Brooklyn.
Thank
You have
you.
given us so much.
Right, and you,
tribute in life.
Alexandra will give you my contact number. When I'm back in New York, we will meet, I hope.
Reb Leaner, I think
Yeah.
there were other people that had questions. I don't know if we have time,
I think
Go
Celia.
ahead, I have time. It's up to you. I
Okay.
am
Okay.
fine.
All right. Let's.
Okay.
If it's okay with you, Celia.
Of course.
Okay, go for it.
So, whom am I speaking with?
Tamar.
Tamar?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to share my feeling and my comment. I want to thank you for sharing your story and for Rabbi Lina for organizing. And is so I feel such a great importance of hearing these stories. And I recognize every day more and more our responsibility to keep saying this and keep telling, and because one day there will no more be any survivors, and it's our total responsibility to to keep on and saying.
I'm just
and
listening
I am
to the end of
Absolutely.
yeah,
Thank
and I
you,
just
right.
wanted to share this, that I feel it so strong, and every time I hear a story, I feel this needs to be documented and said and shared for next and next and next generations.
Absolutely,
Because
because
that's our
yes,
strength as the
absolutely.
Jewish people.
So,
That's our strength of memorizing and remembering and transmitting.
amen to that. Let's hope it goes on. And it's now what, 75? How many years is it now? 75?
75.
75 years. And I came to these United States in 1949. And I was never going to talk about my experience. I'm an American. Here I am in 2020. And I understand that you're finding this interesting. So thank you, all of you. It is indeed my privilege to be able to share this with you, and that I have such attentive listener. And Alexandra for arranging, and Rabbi Lira. Thank you all.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else? I have the time. The evening is all mine. So, okay.
I have a question I'd like to ask.
Go ahead.
Daniel?
Yes.
Yes, sir. I have a Daniel too. Okay, a Daniel's grandson. Go on.
Well, it's a great name. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to ask you if you've been able to return to the place you lived in, and if there was anything that's been done there to commemorate the people who died.
Okay, so regretfully, right now, I go on the March of the Living with students from Florida. And the city where I lived is no longer Poland. It is now Ukraine. So when I go on the March of the Living, and I was in Krakow and Warsaw and, the other towns nearby, and I wanted to, it's only say like a 4-hour, car ride. I was told that, it was too much of a responsibility for the people with whom I travel with the March. So no, I have not been. And obviously, I don't know what will be, but as of late, we've had problems with Ukraine. So I have never been back, no. I would love to in my whatever time I have left to see whether I would experience or remember anything, but I have not been back. I've been to, as I said, Krakow and Warsaw, and, I was not in Auschwitz, but I was, in Auschwitz and Buchenwald, because have any of you been on the March of the Living or not?
I have, yeah.
You have? Okay,
Mhm.
then you saw it all, right? So,
Yeah.
right. And I find that the students who do experience the March come away in a way with just appreciating life so much more, and they will be the ones to carry on the story when we are no longer here. So I read on it. I have a book. It's still a magnificent, very big, cultural city, Lvov is, but unfortunately, no, I have not been there. So that's where it is. So thank you, Daniel. Anybody else?
Celia, can I take the rabbi's privilege and ask the final question?
Of course.
Great. So I'm really nervous and scared about ways that we can preserve Shoah memory moving forward
Yes,
for
sir.
the next generation. And I'm just curious how you think we can best educate future generations. Like, I'm thinking my youngest son is 4 years old, and I doubt he's going to have the opportunity to hear
Right.
face to face to a survivor. So how do you think we should share the message of our people?
Well, that's when my children were very young, they still had my mom. I was never going to talk about it. So my mom told them. And as they grew older and they started going, to school, obviously the teachers at that time in the yeshiva were mostly, my kids initially went to Yeshiva Rambam, on wherever that was, King's Highway or something. So the teachers spoke of it a little. But now younger children, like I have great-grandchildren, this is a little too young to start them. But you can't teach them yet, but just if someone is needy and they need to, like say, seeing a person, like a homeless person sitting there looking for, reaching out their hand for a tip, for money or food, tell them, I used to be like that and people helped me. So, don't shy away, as long as it's safe for the child though, but just show them that people are needy. This is my feeling. Obviously, I have great grandchildren and my granddaughters, do their own thing, but they already know the story, and there'll be others. There are already the second generation, are, my oldest daughter is 63, 64. She can already tell her children. So it's learning and knowing the story and having family members, remind them. If you're sitting, let's say, at a Shabbat table and you have an abundance of food and family members, just say, do you know how lucky you are that we're all together and celebrating together? Do you know that not everybody is so fortunate? So, just bring that in. Years ago, with my own grandchildren, we did Reading Rainbow, the TV show that was popular then, and showing children how not every child has everything that our children have now. There are, kids that wait for school lunches because they don't have food at home, right? So I guess that's the way, but I don't know. I haven't raised little ones for a while because my own children are now, well, some are, but some are grandparents. No, one is a grandparent, but I don't know how to answer other than to show them how blessed and fortunate they are by having loving, caring families, family holidays, being in shul together, having a Shabbat gathering of grandparents and aunts and uncles. That's a gift. It doesn't come to everyone. This is how I would make them aware. That's the best I know how.
I think that's a good lesson. And with your permission, I want to end by playing a special recording of a Kel Malay Rachamim in honor of the memory of the 6 million that I'll be able to play over the computer.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Now I'm verklempt.
Okay. All right. Let me figure out how to do this. Give me 1 second. Thank you everyone again for taking the time to be with us here tonight. Celia, from the bottom of my heart, Hashem should bless you with a long, long, long life and continue to spread the amazing light and wisdom that you shared with us tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi. It was truly my privilege. And I do look forward to perhaps being with you and meeting anyone or all of your members there today. So
Great. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Stay safe. Thank you. Stay safe and healthy. And may this plague be over soon, so that we can get back to normal life. Pray. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Farewell, everyone.
Thank you.
תודה רבה.
Bye.